Prologue. Shadows clung to the jagged walls, stretching like grasping fingers as cloaked figures close around the altar. Their black covers, frayed and heavy with years of ash, swayed with the flicker of candlelights. The arch behind it loomed like the mouth of some ancient beast, and a natural grin of bones lined its oppressive maw. The tapestry beneath it stitched with insectoid shapes that seemed to writhe in the faint light when stared at too long. Wax dripped onto the stone floor in uneven trails, the faint glow casting the woman's form into a trembling silhouette. Her arms are wrenched behind her, knuckles white where the cultist's grip dug deep. She was slammed onto the pitted altar's surface. Her cries, raw and desperate, were smothered beneath the foul gag it pressed into her mouth, leaving only muffled sobs, melding with the incoherent chanting that fills the room. The voices are a low, rasping hum, weaving through the air like worms. Her gaze darts between shadowed faces, eyes hollow, hidden beneath their sunken hoods. One steps forward, hand hovering just sparing her skin, before pressing a slick, crimson mark to her forehead. The air thickens, breathing itself growing harder. The executioner emerges from the circle behind and hidden, an axe in hand, its blade scarred and blackened with use. As a ritual reaches its peak, she desperately thrashes in utter helplessness, the candlelight flashing off the metal before the heavy blade descends. The wet crack and tearing splatter broke the chanting in a single beat. The red liquid coursing down the altar's surface, tracing the crude lines of the emblem until it gleamed, alive in its wavering glow.
September 30th, 1998. It's a day I'll never forget. The cop inside me died that day. And that night, Raccoon City was wiped out, thanks to the bioweapons created by Umbrella. Somehow I made it out, but too many others weren't so lucky. I was asked later to join a top-secret government program. Not that I had a choice. The training, punishing missions, nearly killed me. But at least I kept my mind off everything. If I could just forget what happened that night, the pain, even for a second. This time, it can be different. It has to.
The police car rattled along the cracked, neglected road, its aged frame groaning with each jolt. Beyond the dusty windows, the night swallowed the land, the skeletal silhouettes of trees swaying in the wind like silent sentinels. Their blackened trunks blurred into an unbroken wall, and the beams of the highlights catching glimpses of gnarled branches clawing at the air. Inside, the dim glow of the faint moonlight that cast Leon's face in fractured shadows. His head rests heavily against his hand with his thoughts, eyes fixated on nothing, as if listening to some far-off memory he wishes he can forget. A low hum from the tires over loose gravel brings him back to why he is here. He slides a treasure photograph from his jacket. In the pale light, the woman's features emerge. Dark blonde hair drawn into a tight bob, a hidden mole tucked under her chin. Her unblemished skin making her look almost untouched by time. She wears a brown leather coat with an embroidered maroon scarf, its thread catching the light in subtle flashes. She was the sort of person who, even in stillness, radiated significance and class.
So tell me, Yankee,
The accented voice cut through the quietness, carrying a mix of amusement and curiosity. The officer turned in his passenger seat, eyes catching the brief glint of the moonlight as he regarded Leon.
why did you come to this horrible place? As close to nowhere that I've ever seen.
Leon's gaze lazily shifting away, as if reluctant to open the door to his thoughts. And then, almost absently, he met the man's stare.
Let's just say, looking for someone.
That someone must be very important, huh?
The officer turned forward again, shoulders rising and falling in a defeated shrug.
The chief gave the orders himself. Help him, he said.
Well, I'm sure you boys didn't come all the way out here to roast marshmallows.
The officer chuckled under his breath, and Leon added, his voice laced with dry sarcasm.
Or maybe you did.
The passenger looked back once more, the corners of his mouth curling in a playful smirk.
You have a strange sense of humor. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Just between us. A lot of people have gone missing around here. And it's been that way for a while now.
Leon's eyes flickering to the force pressing on the road, its depths swallowing the moonlight.
Well then, should be just another day in the office, right?
The officer gave a slow, almost approving hum.
I mean, last week there was a search for some missing hikers.
I'm sure you'll do your best to help me.
Leon said. The officer laughed again, waving his hand in surrender, while the car rolled deeper into the smothering black of the forest. Somewhere, beyond the reach of the headlights, the trees seemed to lean closer, their shadows bending toward the sound of the approaching engine.
I think this is it.
One officer muttered, his voice carrying a mix of relief and fatigue. The car shuddered to a halt, the brakes whining in protest as the gravel crunched underneath the tires.
Nature calls, huh? I'll be right back.
The passenger door creaked open, spilling the cold night air into the confined space. The man stepped out into the pale wash of the headlights, breath misting in front of him.
Qué frío.
¿Te has bebido el bar entero?
The driver asked dryly as his partner wandered off, replying with only a sharp click of his tongue. With the silence stretching too long for his liking, the driver flicked his gaze to the rear-view mirror.
You smoke?
He held up his pack towards Leon, who waved him off with a small motion, eyes fixed instead on the tree line. The forest looms, there, its edges soft and uncertain in the darkness, each sway of the branches whispering something unseen. The driver struck his lighter, flame catching in an orange flare before fading into an amber glow of the cigarette. He leans back in his seat, exhaling slowly. Leon, however, sits slightly forward, scanning the shadows as if expecting them to move. Far beyond the reach of the headlights, the other officer steps in between the trees, their skeletal forms blotting out what little moonlight broke through the canopy. The air hung heavy, damp and unmoving. He tries to steady his nervous breathing.
Vaya sitio más tétrico.
He muttered, fumbling at his belt. The sound of his own voice was barely enough to drown out the imagined noises. The faint snap of a twig, a rustle that might have been leaves or something more deliberate.
Hey! ¿Hay alguien ahí?
The forest gave no answer, but the silence pressed even harder. He yanked up his pants, fingers clumsily working at his belt, eyes darting into the darkness. The urge to leave overrode everything else. Step by step, he backed away, head jerking left, then right, every shadow of possible movement, every sound too close. In the cruiser, the driver twisted the radio knob with a growing scowl. Only static answered, an erratic hiss that set his teeth on edge. With a grunt, he shut it off, returning to his cigarette. His gaze drifted to the window, suspicion settling on his face.
He sure is taking his time. Did he fall in?
He looked at Leon again through the mirror.
Maybe you better go and take a look.
His tone carried a mockery that failed to hide the reluctance beneath it. Leon's expression didn't change. He simply sighed, reached for the door, and stepped out into the cold.
Oh, watch the car. Wouldn't want to get a parking ticket.
So much for helping me.
Leon muttered under his breath, walking toward the edge of the light and into the waiting dark. Chapter 1. A Run-In with the Locals. The Spanish forest was a withered, forsaken thing, its sparse trees clinging to the rocky slopes like stubborn relics, their barbed branches stretching toward the sky as if trying to claw away at the meager moonlight. The earth was sodden with black mud, each step pulling at Leon's boots, as if the land itself sought to drag him down. Here, nature had swallowed what man abandoned long ago, crumbling walls and rusted debris jutting from the undergrowth like bones from a forgotten grave. Leon moved with deliberate caution along the half-hidden trail, the path flanked by rotting, star-shaped crosses jutting out of the muck. Ahead, triangles of rusted barbed wire snarled across the way, forcing him to weave around them. When he emerged on the other side of the fence, a stone gate loomed in the gloom, one of its iron doors lying twisted and broken in the mud.
How far could he have gone?
He muttered, eyes narrowing at the black shape of crows perching overhead. Beyond the gate, the air grew heavier, the mud underfoot darkened, thick streaks of red soaking into the water-logged ground. A thin dread tightened in Leon's chest as he followed the trail, the metallic scent of blood growing stronger with each step. In the path lies a small altar crescent with a carcass. It is of an elk, its hide matted with gore, ribs splitting through torn skin. A swarm of fat flies rising and following in lazy waves over the remains. Leon's gaze lingered only for a moment. This was not the man he was after, and he pressed on. The overgrowth thickened, whipping at his jacket, thorns catching on the fabric. Another coil of barbed wire forcing him down to crouch low before spilling out into a small yard, littered with rusted tools, broken beyond use. Before him stood a large cottage, its windows barricaded and its roof sagging like a wounded beast. Yet behind one filthy pane, a faint light glowed, small but undeniably alive. The short staircase creaked under his boots as he ascended. The front door was a dark wood, rotted in places, so that slivers of lamplight leaked through the gaps. He glanced once over his shoulder at the yard before pressing the door open. The faint groan of the hinges carried into the night. It was already unlocked, as if waiting for him. Inside, the smell of damp wood and dust clung to the air. Firewood was neatly stacked against one wall, but tools lay scattered carelessly across the floor as though dropped in mid-use. Beyond, a narrow hallway stretched forward before veering right. a single closed door standing between him and the turn.
Anyone home?
His voice faded into the quiet, swallowed by the faint sigh of a draft and the distant creak of settling boards. He moved to the door on his right, pushing it open to reveal a bedroom bathed in thin lamplight. Half the room was comparatively livable, with its pages welded shut with dust, and an iron-framed bed that seemed more used. The other half looked as though a violent wind has torn through it, scattering papers and splintering wood. Among the chaos, something caught his attention. Near a heap of crumpled sheets lay a familiar star-shaped cross, but this one was painted in dark, drying blood. He picked it up, turning it over to find a scrap of parchment tied to the back. The crude scrawl read, "Cerca el juicio, judgment is nigh." Leon set it down with more force than he intended and left the room. Continuing down the hall, the corridor felt colder now, less like a part of the house and more like a throat leading deeper to something it should not. At its end stood an ornate door, chains wound tightly around its frame, dangling with more star-shaped crosses, the frame crowned with a sun-bleached deer skull. He tested the handle. It was locked. A key would be needed. To his right waited another door, and from beyond it came the faint sound of movement. Leon pushed it open. The kitchen inside was plain, a long wooden table stretching across the center, a blackened fireplace cradling a pot of iron. As he shut the door behind him, a pale flicker danced at the edge of his vision. He turned sharply. An old man stood there, casted in the light of the fireplace. His skin creased and shallow, hair and beard streaked with white. More unsettling with his sudden presence was the stillness of his arrival. No sound, no footsteps, just there. Slowly, the man turned away, mumbling under his breath, as though speaking to some unseen listener. His movements betraying no awareness of Leon's existence at all. The smell of the simmering broth hung in the air, tinged with something metallic and sour. Leon just stood inside the threshold, eyes fixed on the old man as he walked to the hearth.
Sorry to barge in like this.
Leon said, voice low but firm. The man, however, gave no sign he'd heard. He sat and stirred the iron pot slowly, his pale, vein hands moving with mechanical precision, and the ladle scraping against the rim.
Busco a un policía. Vino aquí?
Leon tried again, switching to Spanish. Still nothing. No flicker of recognition. No pause in the stirring. The silence pressed in on Leon, made heavier by the sound of bubbling liquid. And then, while looking around the room, something on the floor caught his eye. By his boot, a badge. He stooped, lifting it up from the ground. Black leather, tacky with dark red stains. His gaze fell to the photograph on it, the face of the man he'd been sent to find. Before the thought could fully register, a guttural bellow tore through the room behind him. Leon spun, combat knife flashing into his grip. The hatchet came down in a blur, its handle biting to steel instead of flesh. The impact jolted up his arm as the old man leaned in, forcing the blade towards him with unnatural strength. With teeth clenched, Leon twisted, redirecting the swing downward. A sudden surge of strength let him shove the attacker back a step. But that reprieve was fleeting. The man charged again. This time, Leon pivoted, his leg snapping out in a brutal roundhouse kick. The impact sent the villager crashing into the wall, dust plummeting from the bare rock wall as he fell to the floor. Leon's pistol was in his hand before the man even hit the ground, but there was no need to fire. The villager lay still, head lolling at an impossible angle, blood spilling from his mouth. Leon's pulse hammered in his ears. Then, screams, male, pained, somewhere deeper in the house.
This is not good.
He spots a key laying beside the corpse and quickly snatched it up. He races to the locked door back in the hallway. The ornate lock gave away with a metallic clink. Gun raised, Leon descended into the bowels of the lodge. The walls were crude, stitched together from warped planks. Yellowed bones dangled from the ceiling like charms, swinging faintly in the draft. The stench was choking. Rot, damp earth, and the faint aroma of vermin. At the far end, a ragged curtain hid something. Leon brushed it aside, revealing more grotesque trophies. Then, static, faint, tiny, to his left. His flashlight beam found a body.
Hey!
Leon knelt, but the truth was already plain. The officer's eyes were glassy, blood pooling thick around his neck, uniform soaked in crimson. The radio on his chest erupted in panic shouting. Leon snatched it up.
I read you.
Only more screams answered.
What's your situation?
More static, and even more screaming. Then, nothing. Leon hurled the radio aside.
What the hell's going on?
He turned for the stairs. A dull thud above. Then a wet, dragging sound.
What was that?
He murmurs. At the base of the steps, something moved. It was the villager, or what was left of him. His head still hung crooked, but now strands like worms writhed in the air where the wound gaped. He shambles forward, arms outstretched.
No fucking way.
2 shots tore into the man's chest. He staggered, but it did not stop. Leon slipped past his grasp, slashing twice with his knife, then firing again. The first bullet to hit the man's face made him flinch, but the second dropped him.
This just keeps getting worse.
Not waiting for the man to get up a third time, Leon bounded up the stairs and froze in a crouch. Another villager was inside, running low on ammo. Leon hugged a corner, waiting for the man to pass. Then, while the other was rummaging in another room, Leon slipped the opposite way, finding the stairs to the second floor. At the top, a door stood ajar. Leon swept inside, finding it empty. He shut it quickly, sliding the bolt home, hopefully sealing the door. The room was dim, its walls papered with photographs and notes. At the center hung a large map of the region. His gaze locked on one image, though. It's her. Same clothes, same face as the picture in his pocket. But here, she was bound and bruised. Leon tapped his earpiece. A series of beeps played in his ear.
Bruce, this is Condor 1.
Hunnigan here. What's your sit rep?
The woman's voice was calm and professional.
The President's daughter, Baby Eagle. It's likely she's in this village.
Our intel was correct then. Well done.
Need a location on a nearby lake. She may have been taken there.
Copy that. I'll see what I can find.
Hurry up.
Something's happened to the people here. My escorts are...
Banging, then a deafening crash shook the door. An axe head attempting to burst through the wood. Splinters sprang across the floor.
Gotta go. Talk later.
The door gave away entirely. 3 men spilling into the room.
Let myself out.
Leon bolted for the window. A blade missed him by inches. Shattering the glass, he rolled hard on the ground below. Air knocked out from his lungs with a pained grunt. However, when he looked up, the men stood at the window. Their eyes locked on him before, without a word, they turned and walked away, disappearing back into the house.